Mutual trust isn't always associated with relationships between the police and the community. But one new deputy chief in Rochester is on a mission to not only build mutual trust, but to also change the way residents view law enforcement. Joining me in the studio to explain is newly appointed Deputy Chief of Communications for the Rochester Police Department, LaRon Singletary. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So you are a Rochester native. You graduated from Marshall High School. You received your master's from SUNY Brockport. I'm just going through the list here. And you're an 18-year veteran of the Rochester Police Department. So talk about knowing a city and a capacity that I would have to imagine some of your colleagues don't. So I want to know, when was that moment in your life when you said, I have to be involved in law enforcement?
Well, my grandfather always said that when I was sitting on the couch watching a TV show called Cops, which I think we all know about today, he said I was dangling my feet on the couch, said, Grandpa, I'm going to be one of those. I'm going to be one of those. And that's when I knew what I wanted to do. And also, when I was in 5th grade, I had a DARE teacher named Officer Lucille Everett at school number 37 on Congress Avenue in the city. And from there, that's when I knew I wanted to be a police officer.
Well, your new role as Deputy Chief, among many things, opening lines of communication with the community and engaging in important issues and discussions with residents. Talk to me about how you see that unfolding and who do you plan to engage? And I'm talking about people that you want to engage that maybe haven't been tied in that kind of work before, engaged in that way before.
Well, one, I think, is our youth. I think the youth have to be involved. I think sometimes they feel that they do not have a voice. And one of the things I want to do is initiate a youth advisory council, is giving the youth an opportunity to have contact with a higher level official in the Rochester Police Department where they can talk about concerns, issues, the way they are being policed. Another faction that I like to talk to within our community is individuals where we are not viewed as favorably in those neighborhoods as we are in others. You know, particularly I would like to say meeting with individuals in the southwest part of the city, the northeast part of the city, establishing relationships and dialogues with those entities within our community.
I know you've said that you want to kind of change the perceptions of how people view the RPD and their mindsets to encourage people to not just go to the police when they have a problem. And you said, I want them to see us also as a business, that we operate as a business. Explain what you mean by that.
Well, I always equate it to Wegmans. You know, when you walk into Wegmans, you expect a certain level of customer service. Right. You know, the employees are expected to give a certain level of customer service. It should be like that in the police department. Our citizens should expect a certain level of customer service from our officers on the street, as well as the command staff within the department. And vice versa, the officers should expect to provide a level of service to our customers, because we are providing our service, no matter how you see it. We're providing a service that it's a service that is needed in the community, and I think if we have that dialogue, it's important. I went to the FBI Academy in 2016, and the director at the time, James Comey, said it's hard to hate up close. And I think what we talk about when he said that, what I take it as meaning that when you have a dialogue, we can come to the table. We may not always walk away agreeing, but at least we see each other's viewpoints.
What's interesting is you're kind of like a middleman to a certain degree, because you're bringing together two very different parties in a semi-strained relationship, as we know, and you're working to develop trust and empathy. But these are also two parties that have endured trauma and stress. So you know, how do you see yourself doing that and engaging these conversations so that it's not just an every now and then thing, but it's something that's rather consistent?
Well, we've been working with teen empowerment for years, and that's one way I can get toward the youth. It's consistently and constantly having the dialogue, not only in times of crisis, but also in times where there is no crisis, and establishing that relationship. It's about networking. I see my job as twofold. You know, there's an internal component and there's an external component. It's a two-way street. I have to get the community to see what the officers want from the community, and also get the officers to see what the community wants from its officers. So it's a two-way street. It's a internal concept. Right now I'm meeting with several captains within the Rochester Police Department and the Neighborhood Service Center lieutenants who work very closely with the community groups, and trying to explain to them my expectations as to what I expect my new role to be, and how can I be a partner with them as to what the level of service that they can provide to the community. It's all about service.
In terms of collaboration and that you want, and this relationship that you're trying to, in so many words, rebuild in certain parts of the city of Rochester, as you mentioned, how much of that is community-oriented policing? Is that kind of the epitome of what you're trying to? I know RPD in 2016 and creating this role that you have now, that was an emphasis or an area of focus from them. Is that what this is really kind of reimagining and reviving what that community policing looks like?
Yes, it's giving the community someone within a department that they can have a contact with to know if there's an issue, that it's going to be addressed. It's also giving the officers in the department a point of contact within the command to say, hey, we're having an issue over here in this part of the city. What can we do to try to help you build that bridge? And that's what it's about, building bridges. And if we continue to have this dialogue, I think it will work.
Well, in 2017, you were honored by the International Association of Chiefs of Police. You received the 40 Under 40 award for your leadership and your commitment to the work that you do. So I have two questions for you. What would you say is going well that hasn't been reported on, hasn't been covered in the news? And then what is one area that you would say is a challenge we don't hear much about that you are really focused on working on?
I'll start with a challenge first. One issue that I think the media can do is report on some of the things that we do well in our community. And part of that is us as a department selling ourselves. We have 700 plus police officers in the Rochester Police Department. We are salesmen and women. We should be going out there touting what we do and doing it well. Now, I'm not naive. I understand that there are certain times that we do fall short. And when we do fall short, we have to explain those obstacles, those hurdles that cause us to fall short. And it's about being transparent. And part of being transparent is having that dialogue. It's not always going to be good dialogue, and I understand that. But part of the solution is coming to the table and really explaining ourselves what we expect from each other. One of the things that I would like to do is front porch roll calls. Attending the front porch roll calls, having the community come out and to visit our roll calls, or also having the police officers go out to the community, businesses, residents, and we have that dialogue.
Right. Well, we're out of time, but I would like to thank you for being here, and congratulations to you, and I look forward to, hopefully you'll let us tag along sometime and report on the work that you're doing. So you can learn more, and you can also learn how the young people in your family can better collaborate with the Rochester Police Department. Go to the address on your screen, cityofrochester.gov/RochesterNY, Police Spirit of Service.